In this lesson, you'll learn how to graph quadratic functions, find the equation of the axis of symmetry, and the coordinates of the vertex of a parabola. How can you coordinate a fireworks display with recorded music? The Sky Concert in Peoria, Illinois is a 4th of July fireworks display set to music. If a rocket, firework, is launched with an initial velocity of 39.2 meters per second at a height of 1.6 meters above the ground, the equation h equals negative 4t squared plus 39.2t plus 1.6 represents the rocket's height h in meters t seconds after it's launched. The rocket will explode at approximately the highest point. The function describing the height of the rocket is an example of a quadratic function. A quadratic function can be written in the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, where a does not equal 0. This form of the quadratic function is called the standard form. Notice that the polynomial has degree 2 and the exponents are positive. The graph of the quadratic function is called a parabola. A quadratic function can be described by an equation of the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, where a does not equal 0. And it can either be pointing up or it can have the ends moving down. Use a table of values to graph y equals x squared minus x minus 2. The calculators that we have, the TI-30XSs, have a nice table feature. From a table, you can graph any function. Before we had these cool calculators, we would make a table, fill in the x values, and we'd go, all right, let's evaluate this. What's y going to be if x is negative 2? So negative 2 squared minus negative 2 minus 2, 4 plus 2 minus 2, 6 minus 2 is 4. But now, with the power of technology, we can type that in the calculator and just copy down our table quickly and move on to other things. Once you've used the calculator to crank out your points, we're going to plot them. So negative 2, positive 4. Negative 1, 0, 0, negative 2, 1, and so on. Hopefully we know how to plot points pretty efficiently. And then you can draw a nice straight curve, and it's going to continue on forever with the arrows going up. Because our equations, the line is continuing up, we have a minimum, and our example is different than the one the book did. So our minimum looks like it's at 1/2, negative 2 1/4. There's a similar one. Use a table of values to graph y equals negative 2x squared plus 2x plus 4. If we put in negative 2 for x, we get negative 8 for y. Negative 1 gives us 0. 0 is 4. There's our y-intercept. 1 is also 4. 2 is 0. And 3 is negative 8. This parabola opens down, and so instead of a minimum, we're going to have a maximum. Example 2. A is negative, so the curve opens downward. The highest point, or the maximum, is located at, for us, 1/2, 4 1/2. The maximum or minimum point of the parabola is called the vertex. The plural of vertex is vertices. In math, vertex has several meanings. For example, there are the vertex of an angle, the vertices of a polygon, and the vertex of a parabola. Parabolas possess a geometric property called symmetry. Symmetrical figures are those in which the figure can be folded in half so that each half matches the other exactly. So the line of symmetry, or axis of symmetry, is always going to go through the vertex. The green line I drew in the parabola above is called the axis of symmetry for the parabola. Each point on the parabola that is on one side of the axis of symmetry has a corresponding point on the parabola on the other side of the axis. The vertex is the only point on the parabola that is on the axis of symmetry. In the graph of the parabola y equals x squared minus x minus 6, the axis of symmetry is y equals 1/2 x, and the vertex is at 1/2, -6 1/4. Notice the relationship between the values of a and b in the equation of the axis of symmetry. The equation of the axis of symmetry for the graph of y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, where a does not equal 0, is x equals -b divided by 2a. Consider the graph of y equals -2x squared minus 8x minus 2. Write the equation of the axis of symmetry. A is the coefficient of x squared, so a is -2. B is the coefficient of x, so b is -8. So when we use the equation, x equals -8 over 2 times -2. We've got 3 negatives. It's okay. So we've got 8 divided by -4 is going to be -2. So condensing that, our equation of the axis of symmetry is x equals -2. Next, they asked us to find the coordinates of the vertex. Well, they gave us an equation. We know x, so we can plug it in and find y. So y equals -2 times -2 squared minus 8 times -2 minus 2. That's a lot of 2's. So we've got -2 times 4. Negative times negative is positive. So y equals -8 plus 14, which should be 6. So my vertex is at -2, 6. Identify the vertex as a maximum or minimum. Well, to do that, all we have to do is look at A. A is negative, so this parabola opens down, so that means we have a maximum. Now they ask us to graph the function. We already know the vertex, so that's nice. And the only parabolas we'll do this year either open up or down. So we know the axis of symmetry is going to be a vertical line that goes through the vertex. So it's going to be x equals -2 that we already had. If I substitute -1 in for x, I get 4 out for y. And sure enough, if I go 1 to the right, I should be able to go 1 to the left. 0 is always a nice one to evaluate. If we put 0 in for x, we're going to get -2 for y. So from here on out, I'm going to get 2 points for the price of 1. What a deal. So all that's left to do is draw a nice smooth curve, connect to the points, and my parabola opens down. Which is the graph of y equals -x squared minus 2x minus 2? Well, a equals -1. B is -2, so if we plug it into the equation, we have x equals negative. B was -2 over 2. A is -1. So we've got 3 negatives yet again. So x equals negative. The 2's cancel out, so I just get -1. Okay, so my vertex is at -1. So that's lovely. That took care of 2 of our choices. And if we put -1 in for x, what do we get out for y? So -1 squared would be 1. Negative times negative is positive. And -1 plus 2 is 1, minus 2 is -1. So our vertex is at -1, -1. Well, that's both of those choices. Well, that didn't help much, but I noticed this one opens down. So it must be choice D. Of course, you could also use the table feature and look at all the points you wanted and find it that way. The standard form of a quadratic function is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Complete a table of values to graph a quadratic function. The equation of the axis of symmetry for the graph of y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, where a does not equal 0, is x equals -b over 2a. The vertex of a parabola is on the axis of symmetry.